G'day everybody, it's Dave from Wing Chun Mind Force. Welcome to this week's bus talk. I've come down to the beautiful river. I haven't been here for a little while because of all the rain we had. It sort of destroyed the road. Lovely day today. You can hear the motor whirring away because it's actually about 35 to 37 out there. So one thing I love about my bus is I can just sit here in the air conditioning. So today I'm just going to talk more about focus, but I'm going to take it to another level. Now what I'm going to talk about, not everyone's going to agree with me because what I'm talking about would be considered by a lot of people to be paranormal. However, I was practicing on Wednesday with my student Mark, and we get into some great stuff together. So we started off, I'd put the red dot up on the dummy, and I'd got him to stare at that the week before and gave him some dots to take home, and been practicing that. So this week I said, I've put 3 dots up and I want you to put your mind in all 3 dots at the same time, and just stand there and just really focus on those dots with your mind, just connect to them. And I said to him, like, this is something I can do strongly, but I don't expect you to feel anything particular straight off. At first you might feel anything. And so he was doing it and he started to feel the connection as if he was touching them with his mind. And so we chatted about that, and I called that the mind finger. It's what I've talked about in my Yi videos. If you haven't seen them, check them out because there's a lot of profound stuff in there. So the Yi finger is when you put your mind in points in your body, in another's body, in the dummy, in the weapons, in the pole. So we were chatting about this, and then I started talking about something that I've been thinking a long time about in my other studies. I've got a channel called The Portal Superpowers, wherein I'm expressing things that I've been researching for all my life, really, about unusual abilities of humans, about things that others might call the paranormal, the psychic senses, things like telepathy, clairvoyance, telekinesis, moving objects with your mind, all this sort of stuff. I'm really interested in that. Now, I'm not saying I can do all those things. I've had experiences that I believe were in those categories. I certainly can't lift rocks with my mind or anything like that, but I've experienced once with a senior Wing Chun practitioner where he got me to hold 5 pads, just small fist mitts, and he put his fist on one, and I was holding these 5, and he just seemed to just move his hand, and I felt a thump on my spine, and it really shocked me. And I said, that was telekinesis. And he said, no, I wouldn't call it that. I was just focusing my mind on your spine. So I said, do it again. This time he did it, and it hit even harder. And I said, I'm sorry, that's telekinesis. He says, no, I'm just focusing on your mind. I'm just connecting with you and focusing on your spine. So I left it at that. He's a humble man, but very, very talented. And to me, that was pure Yi. That's when you can put your mind in other things, not just hold the focus, but there's a transfer of power to that point. And that's very much what happens in Wing Chun. I'll come out and say it. I think what we're learning in this art is to manipulate reality, manipulate time and space in a way. I'm not a physicist. Physics doesn't really know much about consciousness yet, but I do believe that we're able to affect things. People who believe in prayer will tell you that they've had prayers answered. They've asked for something, and then amazingly it's happened like right in front of their eyes, and the cynic will say, oh yeah, that's just coincidence. But if you do this stuff enough, there's times when it's just not coincidence. It's sort of, you can't explain it except that you or God or something's done something. So this leads me on to an actual scientific study that's going on at the moment by a biologist called Rupert Sheldrake. He's not the only one. He's a bit of a maverick scientist. A lot of the, or most of the atheist scientists, purely materialist scientists, really despise him. I've actually met one who just hated him, and I was like, wow, this is quite an extreme reaction. But he completely challenges their paradigm. You know, he calls current science dogmatic. He says that, you know, there's all these dogmas of what is and what isn't, and it's just like the old church in the old days or other religions, that this is the way it is, this is right, this is wrong, no discussion can be entered into. There's philosophies out there currently that are like that. You're either with them or against them. There's no discussion. And essentially, Rupert's got the guts to challenge this. And, you know, he's a real Oxford academic, highly trained man. And his thing is, well, he studies telepathy in dogs, believe it or not, because humans always get called charlatans if they say they've had a telepathic experience. Then the cynic, the skeptic, the debunker will always say, oh, you know, you're just deluded, or you're a charlatan, you're just doing this for money, you're making this up. Whereas if you see it in a dog, then the dog's not making money out of it. The dog's not aware of trying to trick people. And he and others have proved that certain dogs have a telepathic connection with their owner, and they seem to know exactly when the owner's coming home. It's worth looking into that one. But this particular one I'm thinking of in relation to our Wing Chun is called the sense of being stared at. And this is something I've had a lot of experience with, because I don't know whether it's because of my artistic training and so many thousands of hours of really staring at paintings and staring at models and staring at bowls of fruit and whatever I'm drawing, casts of Roman emperors. I stare strongly, and people often just spin around and look at me. I'm looking at somebody, and, you know, if I'm looking at a woman, my wife would always accuse me of being a perv. Not absolutely saying I'm not a perv. I like women, but I try not to be a creep. But if I see something that I find interesting, I look at it like an artist does. I really look at it like artists look at stuff much harder than most people. And there's something that happens where when you look at a person, they often just swing around and look at you. And even though it's impossible that they know that you're looking at them in the typical materialistic mind view, worldview, it actually happens. And I'm sure some of you out there watching have had this experience. And I can tell you stories, but I won't blab on about it. But I've heard a couple of quite unusual stories like this. So my point is that the power of focusing, which is what you're doing when you're looking at somebody intently, it reaches out and touches. And so when people turn and look at you, they've felt something. You know, they felt something reach out and touch them. And it's my contention that in Wing Chun, when we focus on somebody's spine or another part of their body or on multiple attackers, we're reaching out and touching them, but we actually have a physical effect. Like, it's not just to help you hit the target, like a targeting device, like as if you're sending out mind lasers, you know, targeting lasers. I mean, that is a big part of what it is, you know, connecting to your opponents. But you want to keep that absolutely effortless body and strike with all of you relaxed, and it goes through. But it's a special sort of targeting system, and I'm going out on a limb to say this, but I do believe it's a type of telekinetic thing where when you really develop that ability to connect, you send energy into them that's hard to explain how it happens. Like that Wing Chun practitioner who hit my spine, he hit it with my mind. His fist did nothing. Like he hardly seemed to move. The pads hardly move. It wasn't like he gave me a shove or something, but I felt it. And you only need to feel something like that once to say, well, it's true. I mean, anybody who says it's not true is the one that's bullshitting. But they have their right to their own opinion. But when you've experienced it, you go, it's bloody true, and it puts you in a different world. Once you realize something like that's true, you start to question, well, what else is possible, and what is this art really about? And I think this art is a purely mental art, and I really do believe we're learning to affect things in a way that's not scientifically accepted. I'm not talking about ghosts or spirits here. I'm saying I'm not against that stuff, but I think it's natural. I don't think it's unusual, and many cultures believe this stuff's true. You get into the old Japanese sword manuals and the old training of ninjas and the mental training of the Japanese. They took it to a very high art, and it's full of this stuff. It's full of sixth sense and seventh sense and eighth sense. It's full of far out stuff that, once again, the cynics will say, oh well, they were just fantasizing. It was just the story they were telling themselves. But I think that's a pretty weak response. I tend to give people respect and believe and see, check it out, and also think, well, I can't do it. That doesn't mean I've got the right to say it's not possible. It's just that I can't do it, and that's generally why people reject this sort of thing, because they haven't experienced it. So they say, well, therefore it's bullshit, because I'm the font of all knowledge. Everything, my experience covers all human experiences, whereas that's not really true. It doesn't make sense, does it? So I'll put a couple of links in the description below. But I want you to keep practicing your focus, reaching out with your mind finger and touching points. And I also told Mark, I'm starting with the red dots because they're really, in your face. You can see them. They take your attention. But I do it to everything. Like when I'm practicing, I really love trees, and I often connect to a tree. I just touch the tree with my mind, and when I get into the right state, I feel as if every cell in my body is connecting to that tree. Like we sort of become one thing. Anyway, I feel really connected, like some kind of Spider-Man rope goes out between me and that. And when I'm on the dummy, like different movements where you don't get, how when you first start the dummy, you don't feel like there's much to it, that like the thing doesn't give much. And that's how I thought. I'm surprised. I thought this would be really movable, but it hardly moves. But when you learn internal Wing Chun, it occurs to you that a big movement's not the point. It's all like the 1-inch punch. Everything's about this mind connecting and moving things with your mind, and your body's touching, so that force can be passed on to the thing. But it doesn't take much to really completely affect the balance of somebody, or affect their force, turn it away, crush it, drag it towards you. I'm not saying that I or anybody I know can actually fling people around like a Jedi, as much as I've got the little baby Yoda on there who's not supposed to be Yoda, but I just think, oh, my dear little son always gives me anything with Yoda on it, so I just pretend it's really the baby Yoda. But I also don't cut that out. I don't really think that's impossible. I read a wonderful book which I've talked about before, about the life of a Taoist priest, and it's pretty out there, like it's extremely out there. But this kid is pretty disagreeable sort of kid, a little punk actually, gets sent off by his grandfather who's really rich to this Taoist temple way up in the mountains. He meets all these freaks who can just do outrageous Jedi level stuff, and the writer basically says this is all true. And there's another book called The Autobiography of a Yogi, which I was sort of forced to read by my yoga teacher many years ago, and once I started reading I thought, actually this is pretty bloody cool, and there's so many amazing miraculous things described in there, powers, and the guy seems actually quite matter of fact about it, and it feels like he's not lying. But anyway, back to us normal people. You can find this power, this focusing connection power, and it'll change your Wing Chun. And I do believe you should always be connecting to something in your practice, because when you fight somebody, you don't want to start learning then how to do something. You want to just go zoom, you're connected. You know, your whole spine's connected from Tai Gong, you know, to the top, rising up, everything relaxed, empty out your mind, out of your arms and your legs, floating. Zoom, you're connected. There's multiple people, zoom, 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 you're connected. You see them with your peripheral vision, your mind's reaching out, touching them, and then the fighting platform goes to work. You smash through whatever they're doing, cut the roots of the trees with your legs, you know, cut them down with your hook kicks and your front kicks, whatever kick, slamming them with both barrels up the top and the barrel down the bottom, which is the leg. So blam, you know. I really do think that's how we fight in Wing Chun. There's always 3 strikes if you think about the dummy, but you've always got to be connecting, you know. That connection locks you onto the target, and then the 3 strikes, the kick and the 2 palm strikes, 2 punches, arms, you know, the arm bars coming in, slamming them, as we practice in Bill G, and it's in the other forms. So there you go. Think about that. Tell me what you think, and I'll see you next time.